The right to offend is not some pesky little part of freedom of speech that we have to put up with. It is the heart and soul and lungs of freedom of speech. It is the coursing lifeblood of human progress. It is the instigator of liberty and modernity and science and understanding. What a laughing stock today's student leaders are, that they can so casually dismiss the right to be offensive without realizing that their lovely, enlightened lives are the gift of individuals who gave offense. Offensiveness is not just something we have to begrudgingly accept. Offensiveness is the motor of human progress.
Hey there, folks, and welcome to the Whitfield Report Monday edition. I am your host, Sam Whitfield, and we're recording this podcast a week early over the 4th of July holiday, but by the time you guys hear this, we'll be back from our vacation. So joining me this week is Luke Goozdich, who is the author of Vipers and Red Rocks. And Luke has a very interesting, story as an author from what I've been able to tell, in the sense that he and I both write in men's adventure fiction and, I guess, modern day pulp fiction, which is kind of a very niche genre. I guess I've been wanting to have him on for a while. He's just released his new book, Vipers and Red Rocks, which I just purchased today at the time of recording this. I haven't had a chance to read it yet, but I'm looking forward to it. And man, there are just a lot of good books coming out so far this summer. So Luke, welcome to the Whitfield Report. How are you today, sir?
Good. Thank you for having me. It's exciting. I love talking men's adventure fiction and, like I said, modern pulp. Not always the case to run into somebody who writes in that genre, let alone who kind of enjoys it and knows about it. So I'm excited.
Yeah. Well, thanks for coming on. So I guess just to kind of start off, how did you get into writing in this genre specifically? I tuned into your Instagram live stream yesterday, and it seemed like you and your buddy Nathaniel were talking about a lot of your influences, which is always fascinating.
Yeah, so I mean, I got started in writing like around third grade, writing films with my friends on the weekends. It's like how we hung out. We would, I'd write a script during the school week, during math class and things. That's why I wasn't doing so well. And then film during the weekends. So I started with screenwriting for years and years and years and years and years until about my freshman year of college was the first time I tried to switch over to novel writing. And at first I tried to be real kind of like smart and pretentious, and they were dramas, and it wasn't men's adventure fiction. But once I kind of fell in love with the thriller genre of novels, like First Blood, Jack Carr's stuff, Savage Son, like I started to go down that path of reading. I realized these are the types of films I was making as a kid with my friends. I just need to do this on the page. Long story short, around 2020, I had a bunch of clots in my heart, lung, and legs. Almost died. Got a little more focused on what I wanted to do. I started writing what became the first book I published, which was Frozen Wrath.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. How old are you by chance, if I may ask? I think you and I are about the same age.
I'm 28. I believe I'm 28. I kind of lose track, but 28. Just had a birthday on May 28th. Yeah, I was born in
Oh,
1990.
happy birthday. Yeah, I'm 29. I'll be 30 in January. Yeah, it's wild because I don't know, I haven't known you for that long, but it kind of seems like you and I have a similar path.
Yeah,
I too was always writing stories as a kid. I was really into James Bond growing up, probably my favorite fictional character. I wrote a couple of like really mediocre stories like when I was in middle school and in high school. Then I got, then once I started college, I took a couple of screenwriting classes, and that's actually kind of how I write things now, at least to start off. But then once you get into college, your whole kind of creative time gets really like sucked up because you have to write stuff for school. Especially, I'm an English major, so like all my free time, I basically didn't have
right.
any. So when I finally graduated in 2022, I had like I had some free time, and I started to see like all these manuscripts I had written over the years, and just was like, okay, well, what if I actually did something? And so I too started kind of writing in the men's adventure fiction genre. And yeah, I mean, I'm on my third novella right now, and just got that submitted, so that'll be coming out at the end of July. So it's
That's,
it's
yeah, it sounds
wild.
like we do have a somewhat of a similar path there.
Yeah. Um, so as far as your influences for writing goes, like who is who or I guess what are some of your main influences? Because it sounds like you have many from what I've been able to tell.
Yeah. I definitely have a lot of like uh, literary heroes that I like to look up to. Number one on the Mount Rushmore for me is Louis L'Amour.
Hmm.
Anybody who knows me, I talk about Louis L'Amour to a nauseating degree, probably. I love that, everything he's done.
Yeah,
Do you like Louis L'Amour?
I'm just getting into some of his stuff now, mainly
Okay,
because
yeah,
of
I remember
you,
us talking about
actually.
this. Nice.
But
Yeah, I'm trying to
yeah,
turn as many people as I can towards Louis L'Amour because he was a super fascinating guy and wrote incredible short little novels. I love.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of the same way with Ian Fleming, who actually
Yeah,
created and wrote the character of James Bond, because everyone knows the movies, and the movies are great, but not too many people have read the books, which are
right.
the books were the formation for James Bond. And I don't really feel like you can understand the character without reading that early material all that well. But uh, anyway, continue
It's
on
different,
though.
different take in the novels than it is in the movies. I've read only one so far because I'm one of those people who's like seen the movies, haven't read the character until this year around February, something like that. I read Moonraker and I liked it, and it was like very not so different, but it's very distinct difference between book Bond and film Bond for sure. It was like he had this kind of mundane life for a lot of the time and had one or two adventures a year. It was kind of interesting take to see him like that.
Yeah, well, Moonraker in book format is also like a lot more serious, whereas like the Roger Moore version of Moonraker, I think that's the one where like Bond goes to outer space, and it was made like in the late '70s, around the time when Star Wars was a thing, and it's not bad, but but it's the Roger Moore era got pretty campy as far as the movies go.
Yeah.
So like Moonraker was like very grounded and kind of gritty, which I found fascinating. Honestly. So
More got the silly bombs for sure.
yeah. But yeah, you mentioned Louis L'Amour, who I've heard of, but I'm just now diving into his work. I think you mentioned Andrews and Wilson at one point when we were talking as well. Or
Yeah, Andrews and Wilson. I think that nobody can kind of write action the way they do. My favorite action scene in any novel is the opening to Tier One, the first Tier One book.
yeah,
It was just like I don't know the way they wrote it, that pairing. It was so visceral, and like I just felt so with the team. It was a surreal experience reading that opening, and I gotta like never get chills on that degree reading something. So I love Andrews and Wilson's writing style and action in particular. The way they write action is my favorite.
yeah. I love the way that they write their scenes too. Especially like I listen to a lot of audiobooks, so
Yeah,
I hear the audiobook version, and I mean Ray Porter, who also does the Jack Carr books, he's fantastic, and
right.
that adds a whole nother dimension to it as well. But yeah, so
Yeah, Ray Porter, definitely the best audio book narrator that I know of, and people will like search out books just to see his narration. I know that, which is cool.
yeah.
He's got a very distinct voice. And you're right; it does add a different layer, a different component to it.
So you mentioned Louis L'Amour, and is that like your main influence for writing in the? I guess uh, you write a lot in the Western genre, um, which is awesome. What specifically about that genre, I guess, made you want to write?
Yeah. So the Western genre to me is just a fascinating. Um, I'm going to start with like the like actual old school Western, and I'll kind of answer your question on why I like to write modern Westerns.
Sure.
So bear with me if it's long winded, but the Western genre as it stands, like the 1880s edition, is an interesting time to me where it's like in between uncivilized and civilized world, and you kind of have
Yeah.
primal man meeting our contemporary man, and I just find that kind of like putting a stake in the ground moment in our history, where it's like, all right, we're starting to form towns and laws, and we're doing modern life now. That stake in the ground moment is very interesting to me, and that's why I love reading the genre and watching films in it. I don't think I have. I mean, at this point in my life, I'm not confident enough in my historical research to kind of do an actual period western. Um, so I've always been really drawn to writing modern westerns, where you kind of take those themes, those tropes, and what it explores in the western genre, and you move it to a world that we're more familiar with, and that I'm, as an author, more comfortable writing about. So yeah, I think it comes from my love of the western genre and what it has to offer as far as thematics and the psychology of man, right at that drive a stake in the ground moment of history.
Yeah. I definitely I'm kind of in the same boat with you. I haven't written a strict Western, but there is a part in my latest book where I kind of where I one of my characters is kind of like a cowboy vigilante type who is fighting drug dealers in Mexico, which is still kind of the Wild West, some would say. So I can certainly appreciate the whole love of the Wild West, especially since like I live in Florida now, but I'm originally from Colorado, and uh, my my ancestors basically helped to settle Colorado back when it was a territory. So like I have that you know heretical fascination with the Wild West as well. So,
Right.
um, so yeah, I can certainly understand your love,
Can't
but
grow up in Colorado without it. That place is
yeah. Well, I mean, sadly now that Colorado is more known for pot legalization and whatnot. But I mean, most natives that they
a
still
little bit
know the
different.
roots of the
Yeah.
West. So, but yeah, I mean, I think your genre with the Western, kind of blending the Western and the modern military thriller is pretty fascinating. So, what was your let me see how to ask this. Um, what was your process, I guess, for writing this specific
For writing Vipers,
yeah.
um, that was the question, like the process writing. Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to think. Like my like process questions are increasingly difficult for me to answer because since I had kids, and Vipers is the first book I've written since having kids, things are so kind of schizophrenic, for lack of a better term, here and there, and moments stolen throughout the day, where I don't have as much of a writer routine as I used to. And so I think the process for Vipers was a lot of driving in the car, pre planning, plotting in my head so that when I had those moments to sit down, I could kind of like concretely know what I was going to do and get that
Sure.
written. And so I think it took a lot more pre planning. I don't outline or anything like that. Like I don't ever
No.
actually do an outline, but I will like make a video note or like an audio note to myself about like plot points, and I'll do that a lot during Viper.
Is are you is Vipers a standalone book, or are you planning on making this a series? Because like I've noticed that like um when I write when I write my books, like the Shadows of Deception saga, which is kind of my series of novellas, like I developed a plot for like the overall, for the overall story arc like years ago, and then for each individual, book, I kind of have like a sub, outline. But then like you, I just kind of write whenever I can, and then improve the drafts later on.
Yeah, so Vipers can stand on its own, and you don't have to have read the other two. But I wrote Frozen Wrath and Retaliation Mountain before, and they are supplementary reading material for Vipers, where you see the world and kind of the context of what led up to Hunter Moss in Viper and down to Mexico. But there is a hard break between the first two and this one, so you don't have to have read the other two. But yeah, this is technically the third in that series, which started about a motorcycle gang in Montana and one of the former vice presidents of that motorcycle club looking for a missing kid in their town. And that kind of inadvertently started this war with the biker gang and the police. And the sequel, Retaliation Mountain, shows what happened in that war between everybody and follows a deputy character. And Hunter Moss is another cop on that same force, and it leads right into Vipers. So you can read the other two to get more of a fuller picture, but it stands on its own as its own.
So you also kind of dabble in crime fiction as well a bit. Uh, is kind of what I'm hearing. So that's
Yeah, I'd say
that's
so. I
just
Go ahead.
gonna
I
say
don't mean to cut you
that
off.
I was gonna say that's interesting. So
Yeah, the crime fiction, I guess, is what really started Frozen Wrath and Retaliation Mountain. To me, those are westerns. Like to me, they're modern westerns. But
yeah,
I think it's easy to read those two and not get that from it. Um, but Vipers is very clearly like a tribute to the western genre. So I've always kind of had that men's adventure fiction in my own head and heart when I was writing those, but they do kind of lean more towards crime stories about a motorcycle club and missing kids.
yeah. I noticed that you were posting some promotional stuff for that for that movie that just came out about the bikers, and the
Yeah.
name escapes me right now, but it seems like you have a lot of influence from kind of that outlaw genre too.
Yeah, that's the bike riders, and I've
Yeah,
been
yeah.
I've been researching outlaw motorcycle clubs since 2020. Like I have the three books near me, all about biker clubs, because I'm writing the prequel to Vipers and Frozen Wrath and Retaliation Mountain right now to show the biker clubs origins with the character from the first one. And it's just a fascinating thing to me, outlaw biker gangs, because again, with my love of westerns, they're kind of the equivalent to the modern day outlaw. And instead of riding horses, they're riding um, steel horses with
Right.
their motorcycles. It's just a nice kind of analogy for my writing and a personal fascination that I've turned into these novels.
So, yeah, and then I mean, as far as the whole, I mean, I guess men's adventure fiction. I mean, that's everyone kind of thinks that I'm maybe not crazy, but they're a bit surprised I've kind of dived into this, genre that supposedly is dead. But like, I don't know about you. I love men's adventure fiction partially because I just love pulpy action stuff from like the 60s through the 80s, but I also love the fact that like a lot of these pulp novels, they're shorter novels, but they have just as much depth in some of them. And I don't know about you, but I mean I assume now, especially since you have kids, like your time is limited, and so I don't have kids, I'm not married yet, but like it's a little hard for me to sit down and like read like a 600 page like Game of Thrones novel, whereas like
Yeah,
I would rather knock out like a like 150 to 200 page adventure novel. And so writing in that genre, for me at least, has been great because it's an exercise in like telling a story but yet still being concise, I guess.
yeah, yeah. That's like you said. It's kind of considered dead when you look at the thriller section of any Barnes Noble or like any big box bookstore. Thrillers are beefcakes, like they're 300 plus pages, and that's kind of what's industry standard. But it's just interesting to me because back in the day, these pulp books they ruled the market, and Louis L'Amour was like, you know, selling kind of the equivalent to what a Jack Carr would sell. And I think that I don't know why it was lost, but I think there's still a hunger from guys like me and you and other people I've connected with for these short pulp adventures, because it's a different just rhythm and type of story than your big beefcake novels. And if you can tell a story in that concise manner, and you can give someone a punchy kind of pulpy story that sticks with them and is entertaining, it's just it's a different flavor that I think is missing. I think we're hopefully bringing it back, and that people we can revive it a little bit because I don't know why it's missing, but it needs to come back for many reasons. One, reading is going down the drain. People aren't reading as much, and I think
Yeah.
it can kind of bridge the gap and get people back into books. And two, like straight up the classic masculinity you were talking about from the 60s to the 80s, it thrives in that genre. And to see like just strong characters being strong characters, and just cutting through all the fluff it's just a nice thing that is missing from modern age that I want more of.
Yeah, and that's something that like that's another reason why I write too, because like I don't know what your politics are, and it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter to me. But I hate how like everything in Hollywood now has to like be overtly political somehow, or like has to follow like a
Yeah,
certain narrative, and like I don't necessarily buy this whole notion of toxic masculinity, and that was one of the reasons why I started writing over more seriously again after I got out of college, was because I was seeing like all this. I was seeing all these like really, all this like really bad like you know stuff coming out of Hollywood, but I didn't see a whole lot of stuff coming out to counteract it. It was just a lot of people hand wringing about how woke stuff is and whatnot, but not a lot of people were actually doing anything at it. So I'm like, well, I'm only one guy, and granted, I don't have any name recognition other than the podcast, but I mean, I know how to write a story, so fuck it. If no one else is going to, I might as well. And to my surprise, I think my series has so far gotten some pretty good feedback, and I'm very you know pleased to see that it seems like people are liking Vipers and Red Rocks so far as well. So
Yeah, thank you. And yeah, it is, I think, kind of a pendulum swing happening that we're luckily, hopefully, um, adding to is that I think people are starving for these action movies again and action stories that are what they closer to what they used to be, without the agendas and without like every time you sit at the theater feeling like you're getting a lecture. I don't want that either side, right? I don't want to hear from the left or the right. I just want to see an
right,
awesome action film or like or read a book that is getting my adrenaline pumping. I want to leave everything else behind, and so I'm with you. Like this genre, it just needs a comeback, and it has value to add, I think. And as far as you can show what strong men look like in a non-toxic fashion, right? You can
right.
see what that looks like. You can show the philosophies of being a strong individual, um, and I think that for young boys, that's something that's important, right? We I don't know about you, but I got a lot of life lessons from books and movies. Like a lot of my personality came from Rocky and the lessons that he was talking about in those
Yeah,
films. And given the youth something to look up to, that's why I write the Noah Redford series. Frozen Wrath and stuff, a little hard edged, and Vipers kind of tones it down a little bit to be more for a young boy to pick up. Um, but Noah Redford kind of bridges that even more. It's almost young adult, where I want to to write some men's adventure fiction that 12-year-old, 13-year-old can pick up and kind of learn the importance of being strong and virtuous and even violent when it's necessary.